States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You all have the agenda. There's copies there.
Yeah, no, I've got the agenda. The one you mailed.
Yeah, but I printed out copies too. Maybe I should stop doing it to save paper. Any changes, corrections, additions to the agenda? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll second it.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second by Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes from, we have two sets of minutes. We have, we'll go with the October 25th meeting minutes. Are there any changes, corrections, deletions, or additions to the minutes of October 25th? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the October 25th minutes as submitted. Somebody want to make that motion?
Good nodding.
How about acclamation? We approved the minutes October 13th by acclamation.
Yes.
Is there any objection to
Acclamation.
approval by acclamation?
No.
None?
None.
Minutes are approved. The October 25th minutes are approved. The minutes for November 26th, our special meeting. Any changes, additions, or corrections? I have one. Under not present,
Right.
scratch made by. I just figured that was copy paste. I figured it was copy paste. And that's the only change that I have to those. Are there any others? Okay, the chair will accept by acclamation the approval of the minutes from November 26th with the change. Are there any objections?
None.
None? The November 26th meeting minutes are approved with the change. Public comment? No? Okay. Reports? Chief?
All right, well, we, for defensive actions first, we have 4 defensive actions for the month of November. The first one being with 1 report filed. Had to do with a 24 years of age black male, 5'10", 170 pounds, medium build. Takedown was the use, forced used. Officer was attempting to place the defendant in custody for disorderly conduct. He observed the individual, he was failed to comply and listen to the directives of the officer. He was brought to the hood of the patrol vehicle in an armbar, and he was handcuffed without incident, no injury or anything further, taken into custody without any further. The second one report filed. Takedown was the maneuver, and it had to do with a 20-year-old white male, 5'2", 125 pounds, small build. Subject was charged with criminal impersonation, second, unlawful possession of marijuana, and also obstructing governmental administration. Subject failed to comply to the officer's direction and attempted during the custodial search to flee. Subject was taken to the ground with an armbar and handcuffed without any further incident. He did receive a bruise on his forehead and was treated by New Paltz Rescue with refused any medical treatment or assistance. There were minor injuries. The next defensive action has 2 reports filed. 2 officers for 1 individual, 35-year-old Hispanic male, 5'9", 185 pounds, medium build. He's charged with grand larceny, 3rd, criminal possession of stolen property, 3rd, criminal impersonation, resisting arrest, and criminal possession of controlled substance. Officers attempted to take him into custody, failed to comply to verbal directions. He was physically directed to the ground in a takedown, and he continued to resist. First officer gave a knee strike to the peroneal nerve to gain control, and the other officer on the other side, he also gave a strike with his knee to the leg area, and the subject then surrendered his hands to be handcuffed. No injuries, nothing further. And the last one had to do with one defensive action report filed. 24-year-old male, white, 5'7", 155 pounds, charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. The maneuver was a takedown from the officer, attempted to place the subject into custody for disorderly conduct. He fled on foot. When the officer then caught up to him, did not listen to verbal directions, physically directed the subject to the ground, handcuffed without any further incident. The defendant received an abrasion on an elbow. He was treated by New Paltz Rescue Squad and refused any medical attention. That's all for defensive action.
Okay.
Moving on.
Yep.
Okay, accommodations. We had 6 accommodations for the month. The first one is for Sergeant Lewis, Officer Halstead, and Officer Cisco. Basically, they're just thanking the officers. We did a welfare check in regards to a phone call. A parent has not heard from their child in several days, where usually they make contact. The officers were able to make contact, and the phone call was made back to the parent. Just very grateful for the officers taking the time to make that contact for us, seeing she lived far away. There's 3 for the same case. One is for Sergeant Koch, one is for Officer Kraus. They're calling to thank for the assistance that these officers rendered. A flat tire was on their vehicle, and the officers actually assisted changing the flat tire for them. So the 2 letters are to them, thanking them for their assistance and going above and beyond. And the third one was actually sent to my office, just thanking us for the professional department and congratulating us on the type of officers
I
we
have a
have.
question about that.
Yes.
And I do think it's nice that the officers help people out. But, I mean, like, for example, I have AAA. So, if I have a problem with my tire, I call AAA, and they come and they help me out. And wherever I am, I don't have to have the taxpayers paying policemen to change my tire. I mean, I could see, like, if it's the middle of the night, or, there's nobody around, or whatever, but we have a lot of registered mechanics in our town who, from what I understand, business is not really that great. And people are struggling to pay their bills with their own small businesses. And something like this, it's a $70 or an $80 job for your own local mechanic. So my question is this the regular protocol that we're going to be changing tires for people, or do we give them a chance to call the mechanic and wait for them to have a problem with getting the mechanic, and we're only doing it like at night in emergencies? Or what is the regulation regarding this?
We don't really have a regulation. I like our officers to be friendly to the public and help out when we can. We don't change everybody's tire all the time. It depends on how busy we are and what's going on. It depends on, a lot of times somebody will have somebody en route to help them change it. I don't know the age and the situation of this. I didn't look up the exact time it occurred. But we have changed tires. If we obviously have other stuff going on, sometimes it's quicker and faster and easier for an officer to help them change a tire and get them on their way, rather than them maybe obstructing an area of the roadway or a parking lot. So it all really depends on the situation. Do we do it as an everyday thing? No.
Do we have phone numbers that if somebody calls,
If somebody's looking for a tow or a tow truck company to come out, we have a rotational list that we'll use if they don't have a contact number.
So like if somebody calls and they say, hi, I have a flat tire, I'm stuck over here, do we just say, okay, I'm going to send an officer out to you, or were these officers just passing by and they weren't doing anything anyway, so they figured they'd help out for a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. We may get a call, and again, depending, we may get a call from a third party saying there's a car stopped in the middle of an intersection, or, because people do, if they
Right,
get a
and I
flat,
can see that
they won't even
in
move out of the
a
way.
really big
But we
emergency.
do roll up on people, and because we check on people all the time. If you're pulled over on the side of the road, we'll stop and check, see how you're doing, if you're okay. It might be a medical issue, it may be a mechanical issue, or you may be on the cell phone, pulled over, just making a call. But that's what we do. We stop, we check, and depending on the circumstances, depending on how busy we are, will depend on what we do. And it depends on who the person is that's calling to, that has the issue. They may change the tire themselves, and that's fine. If it's an elderly person, I've changed many tires over my years for elderly people. So again, it depends.
I used to ask that same question.
No, I mean, I just,
I asked
I
it
know
all.
some of these mechanics, and I know, everybody's has all their guys there just waiting to work. And, they have a lot of bills to pay, so somebody with a flat tire, generally, if they could afford to have a car on the road, they're gonna be ready to pay $70 or $90. I mean, I popped some tires in Manhattan before, and I could only pay, $90 cash. I had to go to a cash machine and get money, or I couldn't even get home.
Don't you wish the New Paltz Police was there to help you out?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Gotcha, let's move on. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I do understand,
My
yeah,
question
but-
was always
That's
about the
my
lockouts,
question.
but then we
Lockouts,
did it was, and actually, this other one, I saw them doing it.
Yeah, this
Um,
one was a car accident, actually.
Yeah, and the lockouts were the things that bothered me, because it's like, get your key.
Well,
But, I mean, we did the
And the
calculation.
locksmith is standing there in
Yeah.
the corner sucking wind, waiting for people to call him.
Yeah, but I
He
think
needs
Ira and I,
business.
we did the calculation, and it was like pennies.
You're right.
And they
The
weren't
cost
dispatched
of
immediately.
An officer helping with a lockout,
But
let's put the goodwill aside,
Right.
was minimal. I just want everybody to understand that it was not a problem. But the point Amy makes, which is really a good point she made before, in my opinion, was we have businesses that are hurting. And although it's goodwill, and like I said, it doesn't cost us a heck, which was our big concern when we saw the number of lockouts. In the economic times that we're in now, as Amy pointed out, I mean, I don't want to hurt, the guy who's locked out, but by the same token, this guy depends upon these kind of things as small for a living. He's the guy who pays the taxes here. He's the one who, I feel sorry for these people, and depending upon the circumstances, I can understand it. But the point that Amy had made last time, and I think that's what we have to start to consider, is not the cost anymore, but the economic situation. I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody, but, it's like, with everything that's going on and the potential for even less tax income, and see, I think we really ought to revisit the lockout situation, depending upon when it is. If it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and the guy is there,
Right.
or if the officer, he doesn't have a cell phone, can't communicate, I can see the officer calling the locksmith. But
Our locksmith works 5.5 days a week.
yeah, I'm just saying,
So we're talking locksmith or
Well,
the changing
He
tires?
started talking locksmith.
Okay.
I thought we were talking about lockouts.
No,
No,
we were talking about changing tires.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but I thought we moved on to lockouts. Was I
No, you did.
No.
Oh, okay, no, I thought somebody meant, because we
That's
talked
right.
about the cost of them.
that flat tire still has to get fixed. It still has to get replaced, maybe. Still has to get remounted, rebalanced, maybe put back on the car.
Right.
How many incidents last month were there? Just one?
As far as changing
Yeah.
tires doesn't happen that often.
How many flat tires were changed, fixed, repaired at New Paltz last month?
I just paid to have them
Make the
fixed.
comparison. I mean, I don't,
No, tires, I agree with you.
I understand
Yeah.
in principle the point about not being in competition with local business, but I don't think that's really the case here at all.
No, I was talking
You know.
about lockouts.
Yeah.
Because lockouts is
It
a
is
entirely
the
different
case.
situation than what you're talking about. Like I said, in the case of the flats or helping, that depends upon the person, an elderly person, doesn't, many a time I looked, I've called a tow truck because I can't change a tire.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of situation. And as you say, the tire will get fixed here.
Well, actually, this
lockout-
person was from Valhalla, so they probably
Okay.
drove home to Valhalla and fixed it.
Well, I'm just saying,
should read it
it's,
out?
you know, that's not quite as
the
bad as the lot, yeah, because
gentleman.
that's something that,
Plumbing issue.
Every day.
yeah, or whatever, yeah. But no, I understand Bruce's point. It's
Might
just
wanna
that
read it.
Thank you.
helping depends upon the circumstance.
Exactly. It requires judgment
Exactly.
and
That-
good
that's my point.
intentions, and I haven't seen or heard anything here that would seem
No,
to...
I'm just saying.
Contrary to that.
Helping with flat tires, helping with, we've had these reports where officers have helped, remember that one officer, the lady who lost the money, you know, this kind of stuff is a judgment call. And, you know, that's, has to be done. I thought we were on lockouts because they've always bothered me. And as Randall said, when I did the calculation on the lockouts, it doesn't cost us it costs us a couple of bucks to generate the goodwill. But for a business owner to lose the income, then we have to say, well, wait a minute, you know, I'd rather, you know, not that I want to lose the goodwill of anybody, but I'd rather have the goodwill of the guy who's paying the taxes.
You
which
had
is
this
what we
one
used to
the
pay
month
the,
before. It was before the meeting, or
And we
maybe we
wanted to
just
be
talked
business
about it.
when we need
So we actually had
I understand. I'm not
Yeah,
arguing.
no, I know.
We're talking about the...
in October.
Yeah, like I said, I thought Randall had said
They're related.
lockouts.
I didn't see it in the
Well, they're
November
related, but
report.
they're not the same in this
The
case.
November report, I didn't see it. but
And I'm not
October, I think
disagreeing
I just
with your
mentioned
point,
it's supposed
believe
to
me.
be.
I understand
I
the
think that's why it was in
responsibility
there.
for the taxpayer. But, you know, I think all things have to be considered in balance. And there is a tangible value
I
to
think I mentioned it
I agree.
Maybe.
at the meeting because I
Yeah.
had
However,
Nope.
probably
Do you
if
have
I
another?
called with a
Do you-
flat tire,
Sounds
they
good.
would give me the name for Roddy or a number or something.
Is
that-
there,
like that.
is,
Now,
is,
now, you can count on it.
Well, I call AAA if I have a flat tire, so, because that's what
Chief,
I
do you
was
have
taught to do.
others?
Yeah, I have two more. Another one was just a woman had sent a thank you to us in regards to, and actually, I think I may have mentioned this because I know the woman called also, and she ended up following up with a letter and dropping off some goodies for the officers. But she sent a letter saying that during a storm at the beginning of October, it was rain and hail came through. She stopped at the police station to get off the road in the bad weather while she was in our waiting area. The dispatcher was very nice to her. That was Katie Caputo. Letting her stay there and just wait out the storm. She talks about an officer that offered her coffee and water. That was myself. I actually saw her sitting out there. So I think I mentioned that at the meeting back in October that, you know, the woman did this. I don't know what the topic was, but she actually sent a letter in on top of it. So it's really nice to see them show that appreciation and this kind of service that we like to offer. The last one was for Officer Mazzari. He actually handled a minor car accident at Stop and Shop, and the person was just very grateful for the wonderful help that the officer showed. So it was just, again, expressing thank you for that. And that's all I have.
Questions?
Not about these.
Any about the chief's report?
Yeah, I have a question. I didn't know we were at that point. I thought
Yeah,
we-
he just said he's finished.
Oh, okay.
It's all yours.
First off, I want to thank the chief for correcting the budget report to the way we look for it, because it does make it a lot easier, at least for me. And it also tells us where, for next year, when I go, we don't do it, where we have a potential problem. Now, my question is, because of the new way we're doing it, chief, what happened with vehicle maintenance?
Vehicle maintenance, you're going to see that we went over on that due to, we had an issue with some cars, and we had an issue with getting in the new cars. We are still actually, to date, waiting for 2 more cars that they're being completed, but we've been lingering with some of the older cars that we have, including some of them that are in the fleet that we use just for school. We do a complete recycling of vehicles, I guess you would say, while we wait for the new cars to come in. When the new cars come in, the ones that we now have that are being used for patrols get put down to be used for a school car or for a court, etc., or sometimes given to the town. Because of the delay in the vehicles, we've been having to make work with the vehicles that we have. And because of that delay, it really put us over the edge with the amount. This year's budget, I was actually going to put a little bit more in there, but in review with the town, knowing that we're getting some brand-new cars in, that's going to be replacing these older ones, we're going to see a decrease for sure next year, because we'll be up. But some of the cars we have, we actually purchased and squeezed another year out of, and we ended up getting stuck with almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, because of the delay in the vehicles. There was just a backup on cars. So unfortunately, we ordered the cars in November, after last year's budget approval, and we only were getting these cars in last month, November, and this month we should get the other two.
Speaking of cars, before you go to your, since you just meant, or do you still have more car stuff?
That's the-
Okay.
couple
Budget
more
stuff.
things.
Okay.
On utilities, was that extra use, chief, or was that just the fact that the prices went up more than we thought?
No, utilities was something that I did not put in the budget last year. Utilities is something new that the town is now putting in our actual budget
yeah,
for
absolutely, yeah.
the property. That used to be under buildings and grounds.
Yeah.
So what happened last year was there was a certain amount that the town loaded into our budget. They actually put that number in. We are over. That has to do with fuel, electric,
That's, yeah.
all those things. And yeah, we are over on that. This year, I believe the town put a little bit more in there, because I still don't put those numbers in. And
Yeah, no, I understand that. I was just, I didn't, I know these were added to your budget when they changed the way they did budgets, but the fact that they're over, if it's a dollar cost because town didn't budget properly is one thing. I just want to make sure it's not because of overuse
right.
by the department, that's all. That's what
That
I-
also, I believe, includes the taxes for the property. I think they put that all under this one lump sum. So that's where you're going to get the fluctuation like that as well.
The 35,584, that's unspent at this point, yes? Am I reading that correctly?
where are
In the
you?
last line?
Oh, yes,
Last
yes, yes. Yep.
Does that roll over into the next year?
No. Where that money would go, if there's anything left over at that after the final, that'll go back into the general fund.
Okay.
And the town will offset that somehow for next year's taxes.
Okay.
They won't just give us a bonus.
Yeah, you're doing so good, I see you got $36,000 for December. And it's gonna be a close one this year to come in under, but then again, there are the aspects of what you didn't control in that part of the budget that you do supposedly control. But I still think, yeah, you're probably coming pretty good.
Yeah, I think we'll come in under budget on this stuff, and also this doesn't include the salary of personnel, because
Well,
we're definitely under
I
on
only
that,
told-
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
The only thing
And
that we can
overtime.
discuss basically is the chief's budget, which is what we look at. The town budget, we don't know what they're doing and how they're doing it, or how they calculate things. In fact, I found they put things in that, in personnel that, and we just disagree that they belong in personnel.
In the conversation about cars, what did we end up doing with the hybrid or whatever that we were looking?
We bought the
Did-
hybrid.
did you get the
Yes, we
hybrid?
bought the
Okay.
hybrid, I think probably about 3 months ago now.
Okay. It's one of those Fusions?
Maybe even
or
four.
was it a used?
It's a Ford Fusion. We bought it through the auction. It's a 2011. And we're getting, I think, close to 500 miles to a tank full on it.
That's good.
So we end up paying more for it. Even as a used one, you end up paying more. We probably paid about, you pay whether you buy a brand new one or a used one, about $4,000 over a regular gas one.
And that's an administrative car.
Administrative car.
Right.
And what's nice is you don't have to worry about the wear on the battery and stuff as much, because we don't have the equipment in like a patrol car does. And also the use of it, we're going to get many years out of it. So when you look at it, through the time period, we're definitely getting our money's worth out of it compared to if we bought a gas car. Not to mention the savings of the environment
Yeah.
and stuff. Probably maybe this year sometime we'll be looking at what we have in our C's account, maybe for replacing one of the older detective cars. And we'll probably do the same thing if we have good luck as we do with this hybrid. If we have good luck, we'll try to replace the next administrative car with another hybrid.
We have 2 detective cars, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one is a 2005, so that's 9 years old. And we also have an old detective car that's in the fleet as a school car or a court car, or for plainclothes stuff around town, that's a 2001. So that's 13 years old. So that's getting ready to be replaced. So we'll kind of recycle and put the detective car down there, and then, buy another one from the auction for the detectives. But we'll worry about that next year, or this coming year.
Just one other thing. We discussed, quite a while ago, as I was looking at the overtime report, obviously, and we have the number of courts or whatever. And we were discussing the possibility, I don't know where it went, if anybody ever talked to the judges, of doing what a lot of towns do now. Instead of having everybody come in, whenever they get tickets, they hold them. I mean, I've waited 2 or 3 months to get a court date. The purpose being that the officer has to be there. He gets paid X amount of dollars anyway, so we might as well run as many tickets for him for that night as opposed to 3 tickets, paying him for 8 hours and going home. And I don't know, did anybody?
We actually, that's been done already.
Because I
yeah.
was just looking at the number
Yeah,
of hours.
if you look back, probably a good year at least, the overtime for court was much higher. What we do with the court now, the court will wait till they have, the thing is, a lot of the officers write a lot of tickets.
Yeah.
Most people, not most, but a large percentage of people plead not guilty to have that opportunity to come to court. And the way it works out, some officers, you always see them getting court overtime because of the amount of tickets they write. The part-time officers that only write a few, they'll kind of baggage, a bunch of them up and have them come in on one date rather than, back then, it was one parking ticket.
Right,
And I
exactly.
said,
I remember
how is
the first
that, how is that
discussion,
worth, they're getting a $25 ticket at court and we're paying the officer, $50 of overtime,
Right.
to be there. So that has been worked out. I know we also spoke about a prosecutor handling the tickets, and, we're not doing that yet, because.
That was the towns that they couldn't do it, and the whole big McGiller about...
And some municipalities are. Some have a system set up where they actually, everything's done, the prior plea and everything ahead of time, and the officer don't even deal with it unless the person says, I don't want the plea deal and I want to come to court. We're not at that stage yet. I don't know if it's the judges or the ADA's end of it. I'm not sure. I know the state police are, but where the state police are running into, I believe they still show up. But this way, if the individual wants a trial, then they're there because they have to be there. I don't know if that's changed yet, but that's how it was.
We did ticket bundling, we started the ticket bundling a
while
couple
ago.
years ago,
Yeah,
right?
over a year anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know it was the thing, but the reason I'm asking about it is because we bundling tickets and I don't know if that has had an effect.
It definitely has
Still
had an
bundling
effect,
tickets,
yeah.
because, we could do it for a week and
Yeah.
then, everybody said, the judges or whatever say, it's not worth my time and we got to worry about the people, we don't.
The court clerks are doing a great job.
Well, no, they...
Yeah, with bundling them up and getting them out. There are some times where they can't always do that because maybe an officer's not going to be in court for a while and somebody is due because you have a certain amount of time where you have to get a trial in if they need it. So they will kind of, sometimes they'll only have maybe 2, but for the majority of them, they are bundled nicely. I actually get some complaints from some officers saying, I'm not getting any overtime for court.
Well,
That's right, more
that was my
tickets.
concern. No, that was my concern, the complaints that, we shouldn't be doing it because it hurts their overtime, but,
Yeah.
we can't help that.
No?
It's not our function. That's it.
That's it. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say that it looks good in the foot patrol.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
thank you.
almost double what it was last year at this time, and I mean, it's kind of like on a almost double type of trend, and that's really good to see. And I see the officers, I see them downtown,
Good.
and I'm happy to see them, and I see them at good times. I see them when it's starting to get dark out, I see it when it's really dark out, I see when there's a lot of people around, and it feels good to know that they're walking around and, good eye on what's going on.
Great, thank you.
And the cars are publicly parked, but they're not in them, so you don't know that they're,
Yeah, you can see cars.
yeah, I mean, they move them around, which is, I like that too. They're sometimes parked in the overpass at the bank, and then sometimes they're across the street, and sometimes they're down, so.
Good little
yeah.
mix-up.
Yeah,
Good.
it's good.
I
I'll
just feel
pass
like
it.
they're being more professional and more strategic
you.
with the hours and what they're doing.
Although I did choose to see,
I will pass that on, so thank
I
you.
did see two of them sitting in the car at 100 Main Street today.
2. I think one's in FTO training. One of our officers, we have a new officer on, so it's in training, so that's why you had 2 in the vehicle. They usually don't do pairs.
I know, they were
Huh?
good.
Talk to me later.
It's no big deal. Bruce, did you have any?
Just a very quick couple of words. We met with the third vendor for our computer upgrade project yesterday, and they gave us a great presentation, very comprehensive, New York-based company. So right now, they're one of the contenders. So we've met with 3, and I think if the chief feels that 3 is enough to try to select from, then we need to kind of review the department's top choice and then try to get a more focused proposal and then kind of move forward with funding and presentation to the
Well,
board.
you 3 are going to sit down and do that. I mean, because I know that Ira mentioned to me, and I think it's a really good idea that, I mean, clearly we should defer to what you think is the better of the...
Yes, definitely.
Because ultimately, your folks are going to be using it.
I think there's
So-
3 real issues that 3 main issues that we're focusing on, I believe. One, obviously, is the cost, what the cost of the product's going to be.
Do you have a range? Do you guys have a range of what the costs?
The range on the low end for software is around $36,000, on the higher end, about $60,000. Correct me if I'm mistaken.
Yep,
Chief.
you're right in that area.
Hardware is going to pretty much be the same no matter what. We're probably in the $75,000 range. So the difficulty in making comparisons at this point is that each vendor comes in with a presentation of their application configured in a specific way that may or may not contain everything the department needs. So the difficult job, I think, for these guys is going to be to really try to make an accurate comparison in terms of what features are offered, maintenance, support,
Right.
all of the ancillary components of the proposal have to
Right.
be looked at and compared on some basis.
Now, Gene mentioned that the town might be looking at some stuff too when I believe it was
I
in
remember she
September,
mentioned
right?
that, yeah.
Is there any thought to perhaps looking at or talking to those folks and saying, if we do this big deal, the town and police, I mean, is there, come down in costs? I mean, is that a
Well,
way
not for
to
software.
factor that in? But for
Software,
hardware?
yeah, hardware.
Right.
Software is our own for in-house.
Right.
But hardware, because we will need an upgrade in order to support the new software. And in doing that, in May, the IT person from the town has looked at what it would cost maybe for the town, and that should be looked at as a big picture because, ultimately, the town also is in need. So the more, the merrier as far
Right.
as cost.
Yeah,
There
deal.
might be a volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, volume
Volume-based
discount.
discount that we could take advantage
Right.
of.
Right.
The only thing I would say is I don't know where their plans are, how hypothetical things are for them, how much legwork they've done. I'd say
Yeah.
we're probably 50% into this anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of our information gathering. So, if it can be coordinated in a way that benefits everybody, definitely talking to them.
Yeah. Do you have a clear like? Is there one that you saw that you guys liked the most?
Well, I think really, the 3 that we looked at, and there was a 4th one that we looked at, but the cost was just
A little silly.
out of our range, so we declined the
Like hundreds of
demo.
thousands?
Yes, so we said, thank you, but,
I think what you need to do, I mean, if I were doing this for my own business, is you need to really take them for a test spin. I mean, it's one thing to sit in your conference room and have them give us a presentation, but I think if there's a way that you can actually get them to, put a unit in a car, and they can load their own data into it, but look at the interface, see how it operates, try to live with it a little bit
Right.
before making a decision just on what they've given you.
I'm not sure if they can do that, maybe they can, if they can, that would be great.
They always can.
really they could put it in.
Well,
I know we went to PD Manager years ago, they did put a test one up
Yeah.
that we did, where the guys went through, and it was like a practice one.
Yeah.
If not, there are PDs around that do have, at least two
Yeah.
of the companies are local, that we can go and sit down and go through their cases and
Yeah.
see how things interface. The one company isn't really from New York, although they're trying to get into New York, and they are across the country in many states. And that's a very nice system also. So again, I think it's something we need to just sit down, look at the cost, look at some of the companies, especially the one that we just met with, they are just New York. They're
Right.
not interested in going anywhere else, which the nice thing about that is all their forms are New York forms, and it's already loaded in the system. So there's no custom, there's no change that we just have to change, the state and, a couple boxes that New York has that Jersey doesn't. So there are some positive things with one company more than the others. But I think, like you said, we just need to sit down and just put them really all in front of us now at this point, and weigh the pros and the cons and then the cost.
And the
Let me throw this
Yeah.
out, because when you mention putting a unit in the car for use, the light bulb went off. And are we factoring in, or do we plan to factor in training costs for
They
the
are,
people?
not the people.
I mean,
But,
officers.
but not as far as their hourly rate. There is a training fee that's included in the proposals, which we'll talk about, 3 up to 5 days, depending on the company, for them coming in and training us. So that is included in the price.
Okay. And then would that, when other officers are trained, do we work that like we do the other contractual trainings that
Yes.
our officers go through for that?
We would try to schedule it the best we can without accruing overtime, but there will be some that could be overtime and/or comp time earned because it's training. But, just like any other training, we would work it out the same way.
One of the companies had a 24-hour sort of training module accessible to registered users. Am I right? I think
Yes.
Cody?
Yep.
So if an officer wanted to find out how to do something more efficiently, better, he could actually log on with a specific user password
Right.
and make a query about how something should be done.
Like I said, the 3 companies, they all have really good points. And it's just a matter of us.
Yeah. The company yesterday has a lot of local references, which I thought was really positive.
And the efficiency in all of them are pretty much the same? Everybody can work in this, you don't
Yes.
have to, one at a time?
They're
That's-
amazing.
Because that's the key of where we're going to be well, not so much saving, even not saving money, but with the new 700 whatever, the fact of being able to get back on the street, because we have that problem about, personnel.
Right.
I mean, before all of this started, we were going to be saving money because we didn't need as many officers. Now, I mean, it looks even better. Forget the economic aspect of it. At least we can get the officers back on the street quicker to handle the problems that this project is going to create. And that's become an important factor, or at least in the way I was looking at it, because I was looking at it, as you remember, strictly by cost, and I was trying to get the cost, remember how much we save by, having a half hour instead of an hour or whatever.
And you can get, and what you've seen in your meetings, you can get data out like you
Yeah.
like to have?
The,
They're all great with reporting. You can do anything,
Yeah.
really.
and-
Have
and
you
the way
heard
we
from
look at-
our original vendor? They haven't,
They did call inquiring about their maintenance fee,
They want their money.
if they want their money.
I saw that in the
Yeah.
budget. It's still open.
Yeah, I am really against paying, and I'm going to speak with them and see if it can be waived. We've done that a couple times because we really haven't received any maintenance. Now, this past year, I know the commission was looking at the software. We're trying to figure out if they can create that report. They did do some work, trying to work with us, but even in doing so, they weren't able to give us what we were looking for. So I'm still, after all these years of having this company, their support has been minimal, if anything.
yeah.
So I have a problem. I mean, again, I kind of treat it like my own money. and I wouldn't pay it myself.
Yeah.
So I argue, but I don't know what our obligation is, so I have to look at that. I mean, because I don't want to put the town in a situation where,
The one nice thing about what we saw the last one, which I like, basically, is that we can save money because they'll give those reports and stuff that we need, that we would like. Well, they're setting it up on a query basis. I don't, because I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, but I don't think we need that on a monthly basis. I think that's something we need on a statistical basis when something happens that we need it. And by having it on a query basis as opposed to push one button and get a whole report, we can kind of customize it as we need something. I like that idea better than that, but that was just because that gave us more than just how many, where, and whatever. If we
Right.
wanted to know specifics and stuff, we could just set it in as a typical query. Unless I misunderstood what you said, yeah.
Yeah, which is what we can't do now, right? It's a manual process.
yeah, now we have to, I mean, you can put in certain criterias of what you're searching for. Problem is, it doesn't give us what we really, what you're looking for as far as a cost factor, you know, for a call.
So I'm just saying.
But you can compute that, right?
But I don't have to.
No.
With this
It's
particular
all there.
program, I don't have to. That was part of the thing that I was doing, because I've got the figures when we had a contract and we knew what everybody was being paid. I have the figures of exact cost for every officer based upon what he gets paid and his percentage of overtime. But according to what he was told, is there's a way to interface this with payroll.
Yeah.
So that eliminates the necessity of having somebody like me, which, I mean, I was doing it like I was doing it for overtime, which is okay, but that alleviates the need of somebody outside having to do this. It's all done now internally, privately, and confidentially.
Right.
I mean, you know, as a commissioner, I'm never going to say anything, but that information, you never know what it's going to be, and it is outside information. So I liked the concept that he said. But again, we have to discuss with the chief, because that's my part of it. You know, as I said, the more important part is that the chief be able to efficiently use the program for what he needs. I mean, there are a lot of things in this last program that I have to like.
I mean, when I said they test drive it, I mean, they have to prove some of the things they're saying they'll do.
Yes.
Because they're salesmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You just have to factor that in, not that they would intentionally promise something, but you know what happens, Tech said we can do it, I didn't know we really can. And before you know it, you own
And then you
something
put
and
it
it
out in
doesn't
the
give you
field and
what
it
you want.
doesn't,
So,
right, it doesn't
you
work
have
the
to
way it's
kind of really
supposed to.
Yeah.
look at it very hard and say, okay, prove it to me, here's the hypothetical, let's see it done.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think they actually did say, because they can give us a man-hour thing, and they even showed that when they were doing a demonstration. They did not show us, okay, here's his hourly rate, and this is what it cost. Although they said it could be done, it's just a matter of speaking to the tech people. And he says, and that's what you put in the contract also, saying that this is what you're going to get, so that they can't change it later. But again, salespeople compared to the...
Do they have
the other end.
references from other
Yeah.
local users?
References.
Good references, that will definitely check.
So are you all pretty much, do you think you finished seeing all that you're gonna
I think we're
see?
done with the search. I think now's the time we sit down and we start weighing out the pros and cons, put it all in front of us, and then, you know,
And then
take it from
put
there.
a little
Put
thing
a package
together
together for the commission.
for the commission to see, and then
Yeah,
From the commission,
we'll approve it and then make a recommendation to the town board.
yeah, I mean, I don't know at what
Whether
point
they'll go for it or not is,
Right. I think a pretty compelling argument can be made. You never know what they're going to do, but I think that the argument is so compelling that to deny it really sort of incurs a certain liability that the town board's going to have to appreciate owning
right, yeah.
if things aren't done, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Because the system's pretty old you have now.
Yes, we got it in, I believe it was 98, right around the 98. And like I said, we weren't able to get the upgrades. Even PD Manager has a third generation or fourth generation that has been on hold for 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, that they keep promising is coming and it never came.
Yeah, we met with him that one time, right?
Yeah, a couple
that
years
was
ago.
2 years ago.
One thing that I can say is if we were to go ahead with any of these softwares and the town was not ready yet to go with their upgrade for their whole system, you know, we had one proposal there where we were looking at changing all the stations and upgrading everything. If we wanted to do different stages of this upgrade, the software being one, we would have to at least upgrade the server to help support the software.
I think you're going to have to do more than that because the environment is completely different. It's much more demanding in terms of memory and speed. I think you're
So
going
you
to find
change
that
the
you're
base.
going to have a choke point at every workstation,
Yeah.
and you're not going to realize the benefit of the system. So I think it's going to add to frustration. Right now, you have a system that's, firing on 3 out of 8 cylinders, but at least it starts every day. I think if you try to take a system that requires much more computing capacity and you don't have that, I think it's going to be a big, big problem.
Smoke and fire.
Yeah, I think you either need to do it or not.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to take shortcuts. I mean, I think even whatever estimate, whatever proposal we get, you have to plan on 20% over at least, because there is going to be stuff that's going to come
Now,
up.
if they did a demonstration project, meaning bringing in a couple of things and putting it in the field and letting you guys do a test run, would they bring in a temp server, or can our server handle
I
what
think
they're
a
going to
temp
put
would be
if we're going to
Well,
test it?
What they
a
could
couple of
do,
times?
what they can do, because it all uses wireless now, it's all broadband from the cards, could actually possibly log onto their server. I mean, I think it would be useful to actually develop a couple of scenarios, like maybe where, 2, 3 cars are responding to an incident, and now people really need to do those reports, and just to see how would it work
Yeah.
in a simulated real-world situation. Same thing maybe to knock out the report that Ira is looking for, just using hypothetical numbers, names, whatever, but just show us how it's going to be done. If they want to make the sale, I think they'd probably be willing to do that, because it's not only the sale here, but then you become the next reference for the next department that's interested, and if they want to develop a presence and get favorable reviews, these guys are smart. They know what it takes from a business standpoint.
Are there any departments locally who are using it that
Yeah.
you guys could
Both
do
two of them,
ride-alongs with,
yeah.
to see how they're, which may be cheaper for them unless we want to test it and run it through, I mean, I just throw that out
But I
there.
think we should probably meet and talk about it and
Yes,
talk about what we can maybe do. But I like your idea with trying to see if they can set something up. Then it would give us that ability to do the scenario, but it all depends on if they have that capability
Yeah.
to actually make it work for us.
Yeah, yeah,
But, we'll sit down, we'll review it.
okay. Anything else? Is that it?
That's all for me.
I would like to say on that topic real quick, and we'll wrap that up. Commissioner Margolis and Kirk did a great job working on this with us. I appreciate not only, their hours they put into working on this, but the background that they both had really offered a lot to us.
Great.
So it was good. Thank you.
Good job.
You're welcome.
Announcements?
Christmas is coming up, I don't know.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yep.
Other matters, I think we need to,
Well, before we go on, under other matters, I just have a question, I don't know. I had heard at some of the meetings that I've been going to, Chief, that we had a major influx of people here one weekend, where it required additional personnel outside of your own department.
You're referring to a disturbance downtown?
I was just wondering, do you know what caused that massive influx all of a sudden?
I know there was a location that had some type of a DJ coming in. Certain DJs that they put on, they advertise on Facebook. This particular night that we're referring to, I believe, where I know we had, and it happens on occasions. I mean, and over the years, it's been like that, where things are generally handled by ourselves, and once in a while, there'll be something that'll be a little bigger, and next thing you know, we have the state police, sheriff,
Yeah,
Lloyd,
yeah.
helping us out with a big brawl. But there was one of the locations had an advertisement on Facebook. They had 2,000 people saying they were coming. They didn't get 2,000 people, but they got definitely more than their capacity could handle. So they ended up, closing the doors, and everybody that was in the alleyway just kind of dispersed, and then fights took place. some not at that location, but some at like local
Yeah, sure.
eateries in the middle of the night. So, you know,
When was that?
that was a while ago now. That was probably a month and a
About a
half.
month ago.
Could I ask a question
It was
about
about a
that?
month ago, but it also occurred during this situation that we're in now.
I think that situation has occurred maybe 4 or 5 times, maybe not to that extent.
Not
Yeah,
to that
that's why
extent.
But there's
There's
been
been a
like
couple
mini
other, yeah.
versions of it as
Yeah.
well.
And we've actually spoken to one place that seems to keep having the issue. We spoke with the management there, and this was just a little restaurant for after hours, because of how they were handling certain things that we think can help resolve certain things from happening. So we'll see how that goes too.
Can I ask you a question? Where are we at with weapons checks with people going into bars these days?
Some places use wands when people come in. It's up to the locations. There's nothing that the state mandates for them using. Some establishments won't let people coming in wearing certain type clothes, baggy things that maybe can hide weapons. So they have some, clothing
I mean, do you
requirements.
guys have any say, or does the town have any say to the management of these establishments? You know, when they're attracting people from other areas, it's not our regular customers. And from what I understand and from what I hear the buzz is downtown, is that some of these people are armed. And they're coming in to these clubs. And, they have guns and knives and all kinds of stuff. And thank God nothing's happened, lately.
The big thing that we've encountered is razors, more so than knives, and because they're so small, and they can have them in the palm of their hands, we just had a slashing.
Like a straight razor?
Straight razor, yeah. We just had a slashing a week and a half ago in Plattekill Municipal Lot. There were actually people that came to the club together, but there were some issues. There was some potential that it's gang-related. But the person thought he was getting slapped in the face. Next thing you know, he's bleeding everywhere. We're looking at that. We made an arrest on that. The officers did actually a very good job. The Sheriff's Department, they got the bolo out. Sheriff's Department stopped the car in Port Ewan. So we were able to get the car back for evidence. But it's a simple thing. That's why I tell people. I said, it's not about who's bigger or tougher, because you might think that you're just getting punched. Next thing you know, you got a stab, and that has happened. We've been very fortunate over the years. We get them. We've had gang-related activities. We've had attempted murder charges. We've had all sorts of things. Years back, we had a hit on one of our detective sergeants from one of the local gangs because they were showing certain colors and or
Is
beads
that
on
part
paper.
of the ongoing TIPS classes to do discussions about the weapons? and
No,
things?
TIPS doesn't talk about weapons. When we have our tavern owner meetings, we'll have discussion over issues that are occurring. A lot of times, because of the type music that's played, on certain nights will attract a certain clientele from the cities around us. When we're seeing issues that are continuing, and we have spoken to that location that we're referring to about this, and we told them that if they don't control us and put a stop to it, that an SLA referral will go out, because that we can do that if you're a disorderly premise. So if they're playing music that's attracting violence, and we'll just put it at violence, and we're going there because of fights and stuff, then we can write up a referral to State Liquor Authority for a disorderly premise. It's nice that's really our bite. That's what's nice about it being a bar and having a liquor license. That is our control. And we do, and we have those situations. A lot of times when they're seeing the influx also, whether it's gang or certain areas coming in where they're having problems from, that every time there's a fight, it's somebody from, town next to us or whatever. The bar will take it upon themselves to say, nobody's coming in from that town. And people say, well, you can't do
They're allowed
that.
to do that?
They can do that. They can do, if they're seeing a problem because of that, it can't be because of race and color and,
Right, but it could
sexual
be a
orientation and
neighborhood
stuff.
or area.
Yeah, because of the influx of violence that's taking place within the groups. And that happens, and it goes through spurts. When we're seeing issues also, we'll actually work along with the state sheriffs, parole,
But when you see the
probation.
issue early in the night, does that mean that you guys are sending officers to hang out around that area because you know that there may be issues, like because
We try to have a better presence because that is a deterrent.
you're keeping track of this stuff on Facebook?
Yes, yeah. The detectives, they view things, especially with what's nice about the bars, they do usually advertise on that. So anytime they're advertising on that, we get a little heads up. Also, the bars have been really good, even that particular bar, with calling us saying, hey, look, we have another thing coming in here. We have a restriction, we have it just students only, but just so you know, because sometimes even though it says students only, they get people that aren't students that try to get in. You know, so they do give us a heads up on it in advance, and
And I've been
we try to work together.
to some, and, you know, they apologized, but I got patted down. So, I mean, I knew some of them
That's good.
do check, and I do know that some say if you don't have a ID from here, you don't get in.
Yeah,
So, you know, they're working on it.
yeah.
Chief, just wanted a follow-up question, which you rang my little mind thing when you talked about evidence. Have we filed the paperwork for that money yet?
The money that was in
The
the,
money that was in evidence,
That we got-
evidence that you say we filed paperwork
Yeah,
and the town has to keep it?
I believe so. I know Lucchese had filed something a while
Okay,
back.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
follow up on that. That's all.
I don't know where it stands, but I'll follow up and I'll check with him tomorrow and see if we got a response. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time.
Fine with me. I'll sway your way.
You did announce it. Do we need to go to talk about, or do you
I don't know
not
if that,
wanna-
does it have to be executive session?
I
to talk
thought
about
it-
just replacing a position, or,
Well, it's personnel,
but
so,
if it's not an individual, I don't know. You guys decide. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. Do you,
Got my chart.
oh, you got the,
I got my little,
Oh,
little
good.
thing that tells you all the rules. I never go anywhere without it, you know.
'Cause that's staffing more than personnel, I think. 'Cause we're not talking about.
one of them, you have somebody in mind.
No, because it's just a matter of doing the staffing properly, that's all. So there won't be any names. Because really, that's still open.
According to the rules, it would have to, it's of a particular person
So we don't have
as
to,
opposed to a concept.
okay. So, do you want to?
Yes, I wanted to just bring up at the commission meeting here to try to move forward with our staffing level, basically is what we're looking for. As you know, we don't have a lieutenant in place at this point, so our detective sergeant is second in command. While he is doing second in command duties, we had moved a patrol officer into the detective position so that we have 2 detectives still working cases. So that leaves an opening in patrol. What I'd like to do is 2 things. I'd like to put somebody in provisionally into a full-time slot, which is what's budgeted. I mean, we have 21 slots total, so we would be fitting that. The reason why I say provisional rather than permanent is because by having a provisional, that means that if for some reason the town says, you know what, we're not going to do a lieutenant from in-house, we're going to go outside the department, and we're not going to do it, the person that's provisional isn't locked into a position. They can be released, and that person coming in would understand that it's a provisional position. If they make the moves and do the lieutenant and everything falls back in place where our structure is designed and laid out now, then that person that's in provisional would become permanent. But only when the moves are made to create that, permanent position. We are 1 down on our A line because of the moves that we have with the 2 detectives in there. So that's what I'd recommend on that. The second thing that I'm looking to recommend is that while we're in transition and kind of the holding pattern with the lieutenant's position, that we, instead of just putting somebody in the detective position for a couple months, I'd like to make a temporary permanent detective, because it's kind of a lot. They start getting involved in a case and then they got to bounce out. It's havoc on scheduling with putting them back in patrol, pulling somebody else out, changing somebody's past days to fit into that block. So that would take, again, do an interview, let them understand it's a temporary detective position, so that, again, whatever happens, if we make a lieutenant, then we'll do a detective sergeant. That'll change the dynamics, so it's got to be temporary. And then that person would go back into patrol eventually.
Is that the person you have now from patrol? Is that the same position?
That's the position.
That is the position?
Yeah, so there's two in there. One is a temporary rotation. What we want to do is we want to make it temporary, instead of rotation, just a temporary detective.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be the person that's in there now. That's why I say there's no names involved. We would do interviews, who wants the position. It may end up being him, may end up being the other person, may end up being somebody that did not express interest last time that now wants to do it. But I think rather than every couple of months rotating, I think even if we do it for a 6-month period, and say it's temporary for 6 months, we have to get a little bit more continuity in it, because it's bouncing around just a little too much.
Why is it a rotating position now? Is it required?
Well, no, it's not a requirement. When we originally did it, we thought that the lieutenant's position would be resolved, and because we've waited, I think we've waited, patiently for it to take place, and tried to make do with what we have the best we can. I don't know what that timeline is. We may be sitting at next year's budget talking about the position again. And I know
So you have
when...
no idea when you're going to
No
find
idea.
out.
I know they left the lieutenant's position in the budget, but when I was at the budget meeting, a couple board members brought up, well, we've done without the lieutenant for over a year and a half, so let's just get rid of that now too. And it was like, yeah, you can't do that when we're sitting here for a 5-minute budget talk. So I don't really know what the town board's plan is. And we've been managing, but not as efficient as we should be with the way it is. And basically it's because we've all been sitting back patiently, I think, saying, okay, they have a plan, they're kind of waiting for this and that to take place and negotiate contracts, and we're still here. So my thought on it is that with respect to them still working out the fine details, we still can function more efficiently the way we should. And again, depending on what the outcome is, by doing a provisional full-time employment and a temporary detective, it gets us to staff levels where we need to be, with understanding that if things were to change, where they go outside the department for a lieutenant, we're able to say thank you for being temporary employed, but that position is not a permanent position.
In terms of the revolving position, one of the reasons we set up, if you recall, with the revolving position, was Commissioner Leverett said everybody should get, who was interested in getting that position, should be given an opportunity, as long as we had it, to try and train and understand it. And the only question I have, has everybody who was gone through the rotation? It's a different situation in my mind. If everybody has gone through the rotation, had an equal opportunity, so that nobody can say, well, I was detected for 5 months. Well, I wasn't given,
I think everybody that's qualified has. We can discuss that more if you want, in executive session.
That would have to be an executive session. But that was part of the thing, too, when you asked about the resolve.
Yeah.
Is that's why we wanted to do the revolving position, so that everybody had an equal opportunity that would want to apply for that. We tried you.
And the other part to that equation was, and I still feel that way, and I understand the position that you're in, but my concern has always been, I didn't want us to look like we were painting the town board into a corner by making a move because they haven't quite decided what it is that they want to do. So that's still my angst to some degree, but I also understand where you need to run the department. Let me ask this question, because I go back to they haven't made the appointment for the lieutenant. So no one's been promoted, so there isn't necessarily, we're not missing a sergeant. So is part-time for officers an option for us here for, not necessarily for the detective
mean
spot, but
for
for the
full-time?
officer spot that you're talking about, and I throw that out simply because it negates benefits, you know, which is a concern for the town board. I mean, is, and I know it's not ideal, but would 2 part-timers work for you in that position? And they don't necessarily have to be temporary at that point because they're part-timers and they don't add to the burden of the town. But I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I
Think
understand
about
what you're
it.
saying, and I actually have thought of that.
Okay.
And we thought of that, we thought of assigning just a part-timer on a full-time basis, because you can do certain things through civil service, but that still makes them a full-time employee during that time. The problem I think that we have, and we're working on getting back up the staff because of the turnover we've had with part-timers over the last year, we're trying to get back up to staff. The problem with part-timers is, although it's a savings, you spend 12 weeks of training them, getting them to be on the road, and they're working full-time hours doing that. Civil service frowns on the full-time hours, but they understand it's training, and because they have to do half-time through the course of the year. Actually, we just got a call about one of our part-time dispatchers that's working more than their 20 hours. But we're down on dispatchers right now because we had a few people leave, and one of them are now starting the police academy on their own. So you get the turnover, and we spend the money training people, and then they end up getting a full-time job somewhere else, or they're not available once they're released and they're on their own. Then they're like, well, I'm working 3 other different places.
But there are some that you can get that are trained or semi-trained.
Well, they're trained. The ones that have police training, then their training is probably about 8 weeks. It still takes time to learn our system, because it's not just, they're a police officer, so you hand them the keys and they get in the car and go. There's every agency, as you're seeing with the software that we're working on, every department has different software, different protocols, different reporting. And of course, learning the jurisdiction. So that's all part of the FTO time, the training period. But new officers that just have the academy, they do a minimum of 12, can be extended. Officers or people that have experience, we try to get done in 8 weeks. So we have one in training now.
All right, so essentially you want a temporary, full-time patrol officer,
Yes, we call it's a provisional, it's a provisional hire.
and that person
That person would,
gets all the benefits and everything that a full-time officer.
we have that opening, so the opening is there. So it's not like we're creating a position. We're just filling a vacancy that we've had for over a
Right.
year.
But then if you tell them to go
Mhm.
in a year or 9 months,
He'll accept the position that he knowing that it's provisional without any guarantee.
Okay, so then he goes, but my question is, legally, I think there's something called COBRA, where you still have to
I don't think-
offer the benefit?
Yeah, not for
a while?
a provisional officer. A provisional officer is being hired, understanding through civil service and the hire process of being a provisional employee, which means you're not a permanent hire.
So that goes with all that.
Yes, yep.
And how does that impact financial liability for benefits and,
So it's only
contractuals?
when they're employed here. When they're no longer employed here, they're not even entitled, it's my understanding, I can confirm, but it's my understanding they're not even entitled to unemployment or anything like that, because they're being hired as a temporary provisional spot.
But does their spot add liability to town pension and health care and all of that stuff once they're, do you know?
When they're working,
If we were to hire a person and they were full-time, right, even though provisionally, would they get all town benefits and vacation and
Yes.
health care?
Yep.
Okay? Let's say the town board decides to do something which would require that person to be let go. what then becomes the town's liability to that person as it relates to pension, health care, and all of that stuff as it contributes to that person's retirement.
Once they're gone, they're gone. They don't pay anything for them. So you don't pay retirement unless they're working. That's a common thing. There's people that do that. They work, and then on that off time, they don't get credit with retirement either. So if I was a police officer for a year here, and you paid into my pension for a year, now I'm unemployed for 6 months, a year, 2 years, there's a gap in your retirement, and you don't get credit for that time. Then I get hired and I go back into that same retirement system that you originally started, because you don't lose that. You get your, I don't know what you would call it.
Can you bring that from agency to agency?
Yes, yep. Once you enter retirement, as long as you're rehired within, I think it's a 7-year period, and you get rehired, you would fall into that same tier of retirement. So you kind of get yourself locked in as long as within 7 years you're back into the retirement system. But there's no payment or any hold from town. They're not obligated to pay for you once you've been let go. Just like any past employee that's been here a short time.
I'm stumped. This is a tough one.
Because I work for HBO.
Yeah.
You're gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
How are you allowed to keep a provisional, temporary, whatever you want to call it?
A
person
provisional-
before they have to-
It depends if they're a provisional temp, if they're hired off the list. It is as long as it goes.
That same person's going to require the same training as a part-time person. The part-time person has the potential of lasting for 5 years or 10 years. This person may only have a 9-month lifespan with the department. So,
You can't work a part-time or full-time hours, though.
right, so this person could work 30 or 40 hours.
30 is
The
a-
provisional
do 30.
full-time temp, or whatever you would call it,
35.
works 40 hours a week.
40.
Yeah, they work a full 40 hours a week. They go into an officer's actual schedule. And again, we have the opening there. We've been down, and I understand what you're saying about not wanting to do certain things, because the town is in limbo on what they're doing. But a year and a half is a long time, I think, to be sitting back patiently just saying,
Is that how long you feel like it's been going?
it's been.
Yeah, it's
The
been.
the lieutenant retired in August of 2012. Or July of 2012. So it's a year and a half since he's been gone. A year ago, for this budget time, we announced and we said who the lieutenant was going to be and everything at a meeting during budget time. Everybody clapped and they talked about doing it. They said, well, let's just negotiate his contract first. It has not been done yet. So we waited a year patiently, just saying, okay, they're going to meet, and nothing's happened. So now we're going into 2014, and we need to operate. We need to be full staff that we're budgeted for and move forward.
The part of the problem in my mind, Chief, is
I can't hear you, Ira.
I think the town board was looking for, they're not going to, unless it's a major collapse, which they don't understand because they don't know what's missing out of what we do, and that's the problem. There are a lot of things that aren't getting done, but the protection of the citizens and other stuff is being done. So.
The administrative stuff.
Well, administrative stuff and other type things, additional personnel when needed or whatever. The work, the chief is, the chief is working with a minimum staff, and he's getting punished for trying to. This is my, he's getting punished for trying to keep things so that nobody gets hurt. I thought about this, and I'm saying, let one thing happen, because the chief just got like that's why I asked the question about those 300-400 people that came in. Yeah, okay, fine, we don't have a lieutenant, we're managing fine, but by the same token, we were lucky, because there's a certain amount that you're not going to be able to do, because the lieutenant. Although he did, the detective sergeant is doing what the lieutenant should have done, which restricts his detective sergeant work. I mean, I'm just using the hierarchy, not necessarily and the patrol and everything else, because it all filters down. And I understand this goes back to the town board should have been making their minds up, one way or another.
Well, that's the whole thing.
Can
And-
we-
And it needs to be a decision, and so we know how we're going to function.
Yeah.
It can't be just sitting here waiting, because in waiting, we have somebody in a temporary position here, there's a position that's open, we don't know who's going to go in what position now. If the one person that's in the sergeant's position, the temporary detective position now, goes back into patrol, he's going to go back to a day shift, the person on a day shift's going to go to the night shift, the person on the C line's going to go onto here, it's going to open another opening on the C line where somebody's going to come off the night shift to go, I mean, there's this whole seniority thing with bidding on tours, so one movement, and we're shuffling. And there's overtime that is accrued because of that, because we're putting people into different shifts, changing their days off, and, so it's not an easy thing. And you do it once a year when people bid anyway, but when it goes into the changes through the course of the year, because we're kind of, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul type thing with manpower, it's a constant shuffle.
Absolutely. See, this goes back to our computer program, if you will, because if you remember, when we had a contract, we used to get the overtime report every month, and we knew exactly how much it cost us in overtime for doing the different things. But we can't do that now because we don't know what the costs are. But what the chief is saying is that we may be, because of this, our overtime cost, forget hours, because, hours are one thing, cost is something else, may have gone up. Again, something you don't see because it's being covered, but it's being covered at a higher cost. And that's what bothers me about not having the statistical information, is like I said, we know how many hours they work, but we have to, but we don't know who's working them, because everybody has a different
We
cost.
have 200 hours in overtime.
Right.
So if you're saying that the person's going to work 40 hours a week, that's 160 hours approximately that person's going to fill, which would mean that there would only be 40 hours approximately in overtime being given if that person was hired. So instead of paying at twice the rate, we could get it at less.
Yeah. And what happens when somebody's short on a shift like that, although we'll fill it the best we can for a part-timer and stuff on the busy
But
nights,
what scares
if somebody
me-
calls in sick or takes a day off, and you can't fill it with a part-timer because of the night of the week, you're paying overtime.
But what scares me a little bit is that, say you did hire this person and you gave them the 40 hours, is it really only going to be 40 hours in overtime? Is that all
You mean
really-
for their,
for the month, like for other people
Spin the
left
wheel.
over?
Spin the
I
wheel.
mean, is that realistic?
there's always, I'm lost a little bit on it too. I mean, if you're filling the 40 hours of a shift,
Right.
with a regular employee instead
Right.
of filling it with overtime or
Right.
whatever. There's always somebody taking a vacation or sick or PL day or have to go to training or court,
Right.
and you have to pay overtime to fill certain things. It's just that much greater when you have one less person.
Right, so I mean, so do you feel that you could bring the overtime down by like at least 100 hours, by half, if you had?
Are you
another
talking about in a
person?
month,
Yeah.
per month?
Yeah.
I don't think,
And right now, it's like
Yeah.
approximately 200
well, actually,
hours.
I mean, you're talking,
So I'm
I'd
just
ha- I'd
saying,
have
if
to
we're
calculate,
hiring
yeah.
somebody for 160 hours, once they get going, is that going to really bring it down?
I think it would. I think it would bring it down quite a bit. To just
Yeah.
give you a number, it'd be hard for me to do right here without having the layout
Right.
in front. But I can tell you, I mean, what I can tell you is we had 23 officers a couple years ago. Last year's budget, when somebody retired due to injury, we left that vacant, so we dropped down to 21. And when somebody left, when the lieutenant left and stuff, we never filled that position, so we're down at 20. So we're down 3 officers
Right.
over the last couple of years. So if we keep going backwards, we're not going to have,
But you still have the budget for those officers in your budget,
not for the 23, we're at 21.
for the 21?
Yes, so what I'm asking for isn't to create anything, it's just, we've waited for the lieutenant's position to become permanent, that's still kind of floating. We've made some moves to get through and function while the town's thinking about it. So while the town's thinking about it, if we make somebody provisional, we can still operate, and then if they choose, I mean, we're not tying, by going provisional, we're not tying the hands and say, well, now you have to, because you have the people hired, so you have to hire within and everything. We're saying it's provisional, so that the town's hands aren't tied, and they can still decide whatever they want, and if they come forward and say, you know what, we're not going to do a lieutenant, and we're dropping down to 19 people, that's going to be on the board, but
Right,
we're
then
not
the
locked in.
person just goes.
The person just goes. If they say we're going to hire a lieutenant outside the department, the person would just
But
go.
if you hire part-time people, then you wouldn't have to say anything because they could still be your part-time people if they stick around.
Yeah, yeah.
So it could be
It's just that we would
possibly
hire
a better
more.
long-term investment to get the part-time person because they may be able to stick around for a lot longer.
But understand that we have openings for 21 people. If we're going to be hiring part-time to fill that 21st vacancy, then we're going to keep going backwards, and we just, with part-timers, it's difficult to run a department
I
with
understand.
part-timers, because they do leave, they're not available, you know, when you have certain things. Full-timers, you can make work. You can say you're working this day because
Right.
you're on the
It's an
schedule.
open schedule.
Part-timers like, I got my other job, I can't be here.
How is the vacancy, explain the 21st officer that is vacant is the result of what movement or loss?
I've
Or
lost
is-
count.
Or is it in anticipation of the detective sergeant going one place or the other? Because I'm
Yeah.
trying, because
We've had people leave, and right now, with the movement, because we just hired an officer not too long ago that filled the gap when somebody else left. The vacancy right now is created by the detective sergeant working as an administrative position, lieutenant's position. By him doing that, created an opening in the detective position. So we only had one detective. We moved one of the patrol officers into the detective to help with detective cases. That's what opened up the vacancy. Realistically, it's...
but that's temporary, right? I mean,
Yes,
because if we follow that chain, that person who's in the detective spot is still a patrol officer because your detective sergeant, who is acting as your temporary lieutenant, hasn't officially been moved, so he's still
Correct.
the detective sergeant.
Yeah, the position that's missing is
So
the
the only
lieutenant's position.
the only vacancy you technically have is your
Lieutenant,
lieutenant.
yes. If we did not have a lieutenant's position and he was back as a detective sergeant, you would have a detective sergeant, detective, and then our officer staff would be up to par. So it's the lieutenant's position, the second in command position, that is creating this vacancy everywhere now.
Okay. I feel your pain. I do. I do. But you know, at the same time, I mean, you know what my reservation has been. My reservation has been the same thing from a year and a half ago. I want to be comfortable with the language for the provisional thing, at least for me. I can't speak for anybody else. But I want to be comfortable with the thing for the provisional so that I know that when that person, when the doorknob hits that person on the butt on the way out, if they have to go, that there are no financial obligations for the town, you know, toward his pension and his
Right.
salary and his health care. And that's my sticking point. That is my only sticking point, because if I am confident that that person can be treated like a part-timer would be as a provisional person, then I'm good to go.
They just have to work 40 hours a week as a provisional. I mean, they're not...
So
not
let
part-time.
me ask the commission this, and your budget man. Would it work if me, you, and I sat down, I got my head around the provisional language in the thing, and Ira with the money and the finances, and then we call a special meeting we put something together
So that the board could, you know, we can present something to the commission
to the commission
in dollars and cents.
in dollars and
You know what
cents.
you're looking at.
And then we can then say to the town board, here's what we intend to do, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to tie their hands and make them feel like we're, like I've said for a year and a half, that we're pushing them in a corner with saying, ask or get off the pot with respect to the lieutenant, because that's their prerogative, and I don't want us
And
to
that's why
get
this
into...
would take that away, because it's provisional. And what I would suggest, rather than calling a special meeting, we are going to holiday time.
Wait till the next meeting?
Next meeting.
Okay, I didn't want, because I didn't know what your speed was.
No,
Okay.
I would love it to be yesterday.
Yeah, I
But
know. That's why I said,
it is holiday time and stuff,
Okay.
and I would like to get the answer for you to be a little bit more permanent about the Cobra, that you don't have to supply them with anything. It's my understanding when somebody is provisional, they're provisional, but if that position does not become available, you're released. And that's how, I mean, we've done it before. We've put part-timers in a full-time position, temporary, because civil service allows certain things. You can be in a 30-day temp, you can put anybody in it. If it's a 3-month temp, it has to be somebody that's on.
It's not going to be a 30-day temp, because they're going to need 8 weeks.
No.
of training.
No, what I'm saying is, I'm just giving you what the ability is.
Right.
If I want to take a part-timer that's presently working,
Right.
who's not on the list, and say, I want you to work full-time for me, I can only do that for 30 days, because they're not on the list. If they're a part-time officer that's on the list, anywhere on the list, they don't have to be one of the top 3, then I can only keep them as a full-time employee temporary for 3 months. If you're on the list and you're in the top 3, I can put you temporary for up to a year. So there's things you can do. Provisional is what
We need to look at
they,
some of those possibilities.
we don't have anybody as the problem. We have one officer that could potentially work as a full-time capacity for us, but because of his other part-time jobs, he says he really can't dedicate 40 hours straight.
Right. But what
So-
I'm thinking, and I think, like, for me at least, I would like more facts, and I would definitely like the opportunity to think about it more and kind of figure this out a little more. But I'm thinking that if you have to spend 8 weeks or 10 weeks training somebody, and the job may only be a 9-month, like, we're going into it knowing that this job may, unless maybe they're gonna wanna become a temp, they're gonna wanna go back and be part-time because they like it here, we like them, or whatever, but there's a chance that we could be training somebody for 8 to 10 weeks to only be here for 9 months. And that's kind of my question, is that I might rather train somebody part-time that could be here for a long time.
Yeah, my other concern, I do understand what you're saying, and
It's the training thing that kind of messes up the equation.
unless we take somebody who's already physically there that's
Right,
part-time.
right, if we can, like-
But then if they're part-time because they've got like 35 other jobs,
Right, but if
they're
they-
not
but
going to
if
take
Maybe
us.
there's somebody that we could do for the 3-month thing, and maybe that could, it's just like a patch, it's not really what you want, but it kind of gets you through it.
one of my concerns also is that we do have a full-time officer that may be looking to go to state police, is in the final stage of that.
And that's someone who's been around for a while.
Yeah. So if that happens too, that's going to be another opening. And, so the problem is when you start falling down, and then all of a sudden somebody's hurt, and then they're out. Then we're
So you need
we're
to be like,
crippled.
you really need to be 1 or 2 ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
Right now, you're not ahead of yourself.
We're not ahead at all. Yeah. And the only other thing I can say is that maybe the commission could ask the town, where do we stand with the lieutenant's position?
Well, I mean, we could, what I'm,
We've done it before, we should, yeah.
yeah, I mean, but that could be part of, I mean, that could, what I'm thinking is as we map out this strategy, our ultimate goal is to present it to the town, because that's the key question. Because this is how things are falling out without this person, and if we have better guidance, clearer guidance with respect to what you're going to do, the chief can better manage the personnel needs of the department. And until you do, we are suggesting doing the following in this way. Once we get our heads around what temporary means and provisional, what provisional means, and making sure that it's not going to be a long-term burden for the town. I mean, that's my only,
Like I said, it's my understanding, 'cause we've done it before. and it's basically it's a temporary position. It's provisional because what it does is it allows them, the person that you do hire, to have the next full-time position that's available. So if we hire Ira provisional, and he's there 6 months, and then the town says, you know what, we're hiring a lieutenant from wherever, or we're not replacing a lieutenant, now we're going back to 20 people, you're 21, thank you very much, you step back. Now, I retire, somebody gets promoted, there's an opening. He would get the position first because he's been in a provisional slot. And that's what the provision does. The provision says you got the full-time slot, but it might not be permanent, but eventually it will be if that opening doesn't come
Somewhere
down.
in the rotation of
Right.
what we experience every year of losing, people
Yeah.
transitioning out.
Yeah.
Within the
be
next 4
prepared
years, he would get that position.
Without having to go through all the intricacies of going through all the hoops and everything that we do.
Right. I mean, I just could imagine that the town probably loves, because it's saving money.
I was just looking at the report and my concept as lieutenant, and again, I don't have the figures, which annoys me, because I don't have the dollars, I've only got the hours. But the one thing that I think we're losing, and the town is losing, I may be wrong, is in the reimbursed. If you don't have the people on patrol to do the reimbursed, I mean, fine, you're saving X amount of dollars, which is better for the chief because it's in his budget, not like the reimbursed. But the reimbursed is the general fund, and if the reimbursed is going down dollar-wise, and this is, again, because of manpower, I don't know dollar-wise, this could be a significant factor. I mean, it doesn't affect us, it affects the pool, it affects everybody else, but, these are all concepts that are lost because, the chief's doing a great job, so he's getting punished kind of thing, that's, I mean, that's the way I've been, I'm looking at it.
Well, if we flesh it out, I think if we flesh it out and bring it back, I mean, we've got enough time between now and our next, we got a month.
Yeah, we'll just sit
And we
down.
can, the three of us will sit down.
I'll get
and
all the
we'll-
details
we'll-
for you.
Details, we'll come over and
And
we'll
then,
sit
and then the other
down.
question is, are there prospects for this, like, are there people that want to have a full-time position that is not necessarily going to be
There's a
permanent?
resident list, and there are people on the
So
resident
there's
list.
definitely like people that are interested in doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, there's again, you go through the top 3, and I don't know all of them, but I think 2 of the 3 have training, the academy, because obviously you want to hire somebody who has the academy so that they can go right into training, on the road with us.
Randall, I have a question unrelated directly to this, but speaking about the next meeting, some of the commissioners' appointments expire at the end of this month.
We continue until they're filled,
Okay.
yeah. Until they tell us.
Sometimes it takes like April and
And it-
stuff.
Well, that's what happened last year, which is fine, but I
Yeah.
didn't know
No, you
how
continue.
strict they were about that.
You continue on until they tell you no or yeah.
Is Farina resigned officially, or
Well, he said December 1st, but I told him, I don't see why he couldn't
stay?
continue to do it, so
So he
we
didn't
don't
turn
have
in an
it.
official resignation?
Well, he wrote an email,
Oh, did he?
yeah. But I mean, it would be helpful, if he stayed on until they figured out what they were going to do, so that we don't run into a 2-2, or, you know what I mean? Because it's kind of hard to,
If there were a position open, would it also be filled according to the town board schedule, or is it something that, notice goes out now if there were an opening?
yeah, actually, how did we do it?
They did a notice last
They
time.
they do an
couldn't hear you.
announcement. They
Yeah.
did, for the vacancies, they do an announcement
Right, in the paper.
in the paper.
In the paper.
Yeah, yeah. But as you all know, I got an email, because it wasn't just happenstance. I got an email from Rosanna indicating the 3 of you positions being open, and then she asked me to let her know if everybody wanted to do it again, and I got 3 affirmative responses. I mean, you sent yours directly to Susan, but I included yours in my email, and I think I copied all of you guys on the
Yeah,
email that I
I
sent to
received it.
Roseanne.
The only thing that I understand you did that, my suggestion based upon things that have happened in the past, Randall, is those that are interested in that. Went to Roseanne and we have that trace, but the way Amy did it,
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly, because I did the same. Because I've run into this, Randall, where all of a sudden, oh gee, we didn't know. This way, if you send them a piece of paper,
Yeah.
you've got the piece of paper, you make sure, you get the confirmation that it's done, because with everything that goes on, it's, oh gee, I forgot, and this could, remember, it happened to a couple of people that at the last second, they
Yeah.
said, well, he never sent us a letter.
Yeah.
It's not necessary, Randall took care of it, that's not a problem. I'm just saying, in my experience, that's why I sent the letter in. All it just says is, my term is up. If you think I'm good, I'd like you to consider me for reappointment. But it's something other than a verbal. But that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, mine would, no, I sent an email because what I got from Rosanna was, these commissioners' appointments are up at the end of December. Can you find out if they wish to be reappointed?
Right.
That's when I sent the letter,
Right,
the emails
exactly.
out to the three of you. And then when I got all the responses back, I sent her a note back that said, all three wish to seek reappointment.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, I did it the next, I think I got responses all on the same day, so it was,
And the only thing again, I made sure that the supervisor got something.
yeah,
That's the only way, because that's, again, maybe it's my paranoia, but remember what I have gone through, I have watched them
Yeah, you've been here forever.
do this. They forget, they have, Harry's friend comes in and all of a sudden, you don't know. And, well, we didn't know.
Well, Amy,
I
you
told
sent it to everybody, so, I mean,
Yeah, I
yeah,
did.
you just send it
that's
to
Well, I
everybody,
figured
so
I
that everybody
applied to
knows.
them,
Yeah.
so
No, I
they're
get
the
it.
ones
Just-
that
yeah.
I didn't say,
decide.
I just send it to everybody.
Yeah.
Because that's, that becomes the responsibility of the, but, I don't want to go into that. That's,
Okay.
it's just a suggestion.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
Eine Frage.
Chief, do we have any volunteers?
For,
Do we have any volunteers helping you or helping the department or
Like from the community volunteers, you mean?
something like that?
Nothing.
Okay.
No, we have
Because
interns
the
that
new
come in.
IRS law with ACA hits volunteers. You're now required under ACA to cover volunteers who volunteer more than 30 hours a week.
Maybe with insurance?
Yeah, with health insurance, yeah. And it's driving a lot of the volunteer ambulance corps crazy. Because you get a lot of people who volunteer, and it gets really hairy. I was reading it gets really hairy when you group them.
but we don't have any, right?
No, well, the reason I'm asking is because
Okay, we're done.
it's
No.
everybody, like our volunteer ambulance corps. Theoretically, if they put them in with the town, it can get a little crazy with the ACA. I just wanted to be sure we weren't.
Yeah, we don't have any
we-
volunteers.
I didn't know if you did or not, and coming into volunteer. Thank you.
We have some interns, but they don't do a 30-hour a week. They do a couple days here and there.
Yeah, okay, like I said, that just hit the fan the other day.
Good to know.
The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I've been quiet too.
Second.
It's moved by Margolis, seconded by Keurig. All in favor? We are adjourned.
Just missed kickoff by 10 minutes.
Then you can rush home. You've got
I'm not
strokes.
going to